double-digit I-Bond returns. That's where we think things are headed for the November I-Bond rate reset. So we took a short YouTube break to help our clients refocus on their finances during these crazy times. And the I-Bond question that they and that you keep asking is, what will the I-Bond rate be in November? Well, I consulted with my crystal ball and it told me 12.4% on an annualized basis. All right, just kidding. About the first part at least. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can see the signs and make a prediction that the annualized I-Bond rate will be double digits come November. Let's dive in and see how I got to 12.4%. So, for those of you new to I-Bonds, the annualized I-Bond rate that will be announced this November is based on the change in the semi-annual inflation rate, times 2. And this change in the semi-annual inflation rate is calculated as the percentage change in CPIU between the 6-month period of March 2022 and September 2022. Again, multiplied by 2 to get to the annualized November I-Bond rate. For the purpose of this video, I've ignored the fixed rate. I've assumed a 0% I-Bond fixed rate for November because, quite frankly, with the I-Bond gold rush that's happening at the moment, I don't see a realistic scenario under which the government would increase the fixed rate. Those of you in our I-Bond community who are lucky enough to have older I-Bonds with fixed rates higher than 0%, please adjust your own calculations or predictions accordingly. And for those of you who are a bit newer to I-Bonds and have questions about the I-Bond fixed rate, the semi-annual inflation rate, and the multiplication by 2 factor, please check out the how to buy an I-Bond video that I've linked below. The explanation for this comes up towards the second half of that video. I've also included some must-know I-Bond basics towards the end of this video. Now, the September 2022 CPIU number will only be reported in October 2022, but we do already have the CPIU numbers for April, May, and June 2022. Basically, we already have half the inflation data that we need to predict the annualized I-Bond rate that will be announced this November. This other half of the inflation data that we need, the CPIU numbers for July, August, and September, I can extrapolate from the prior 3 months, and I'll show you now how I did this. So, here are the actual CPIU numbers for March, April, May, and June 2022 from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics website. I've included the March number as well because we'll need it later for my projections and calculations. And for those of you who want to explore things further yourself, I've linked the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics website below this video. And here's the monthly CPIU change, with the largest monthly changes happening in March 2022 and June 2022, primarily due to skyrocketing oil prices. What this translates into is an average monthly CPIU change of 1.01% between the end of March and the end of June. Now, if I take this 1.01% average monthly CPIU change between the end of March and the end of June and extrapolate it out 3 months further, this is what the CPIU numbers, the inflation numbers, are projected to look like for July, August, and September. Listen, a lot of things can change in 3 months, and I could be slightly off, but unless there's a drastic drop in the prices of oil and other non-durable items between now and September, this 1.01% monthly CPIU increase over the past 3 months is a fairly reasonable yardstick for what's to come for the next 3 months, and subsequently, what's to come for the November I-Bond rate reset. Even if the government does a massive 180 in spending before the midterms, and even if Powell decides that he's going out Volcker style with the next Fed rate hike, the fact of the matter is that we have 3 months to go when it comes to the inflation numbers that will determine the November I-Bond rate. And by the way, both the government and Powell scenarios I just suggested are pretty unlikely. But even if one or both of these things happen, the results of these possible actions would simply not flow through the economy fast enough to significantly impact July, August, and September CPIU numbers. not flow through the economy fast enough to truly squash a double-digit November I-Bond rate. Of course, things could also go the other way, and the monthly CPI change could go even higher than this average monthly increase of 1.01% between March and June. Just think about oil prices rising again, further unpleasant attacks in Ukraine, more layoffs in corporate America. You get the picture. From my perspective though, this 1.01% average monthly CPIU increase between March and June, it's the best number we have to work with right now. The best indicator of what's to come for July, August, and September. So, going back to Jen's predictions, if I stick with this 1.01% average monthly CPIU increase and project it out to September 2022, I end up with an estimated September CPIU number of 305.388. Plug my projected CPIU number for September 2022 and the actual CPIU number for March 2022 into this formula from the beginning of this video, and we arrive at a projected semi-annual inflation rate of 6.2%. Now, take the projected semi-annual inflation rate of 6.2%, multiply it by 2, and there you have it, IBond fans. My annualized IBond rate prediction for November of 12.4%. So, what happens if oil, milk, ice cream, and the like go up a lot more than we expected? Or what if they miraculously go down more than we expected? Let's look at this other table now, because you know we love tables. So, this grayed out actual section on the left shows the actual monthly CPIU numbers for March, April, May, and June that the government has already reported. These numbers won't change. And this entire section on the right is what I'm projecting out, with the July, August, and September columns changing based on this column here, the average monthly CPIU change for these 3 months. This colored column here shows what the projected semi-annual inflation rate will be under the different scenarios. And this last colored column on the right shows what the semi-annual inflation rate will translate into as an annualized IBond rate prediction for this November. This middle row is my base case prediction for the 12.4% annualized IBond rate come November time. Again, it essentially assumes that the average monthly CPIU change of 1.01% between March and June is representative of the monthly inflation growth that will happen in July, August, and September. If this 1.01% average monthly CPIU change for July to September increases to 1.10%, this is what the semi-annual inflation rate will look like when it's time for the November IBond rate reset. And this is what the predicted annualized IBond rate will look like. And if this average monthly CPIU change goes up even higher in the next 3 months, say to 1.2%, something I don't even want to think about because while it's good for my IBonds, it's bad for my overall bank account. If that does happen though, here's what the semi-annual inflation rate will look like when it's time for the November IBond rate reset, and subsequently what the predicted annualized IBond rate will look like. Now, let's play things out in the other direction. What happens if the average monthly CPIU change is less than the 1.01% for July, August, and September? What if oil prices come down and the Fed's recent rate hikes actually succeed in quickly bringing down inflation? Well, if that does happen and the average monthly CPIU change for the next 3 months declines to 0.8% or 0.9%, here's what the semi-annual inflation rate will look like when it's time for the November IBond rate reset. And here's what the predicted annualized IBond rate will look like. Still double digits and not too far off from 12.4%. In fact, as you can see from this next analysis, so long as the average monthly CPIU change for July, August, and September stays above 0.62%, the predicted annualized IBond rate in November will be double digits. But average monthly CPIU change of 0.62% or less for the next 3 months, So there's only been 1 month in 2022 so far in which the monthly CPIU change has been below 0.62%. In April, after the ridiculous monthly inflation growth in March. And even then, it was just barely below 0.62%. While it's possible that the monthly inflation change in July will be lower than it was in June, given where oil is right now, in my mind, that'll be a one-off blip like it was in April. As I said earlier, I'm not a fortune teller, but I am a numbers girl. And based on the inflation data we have thus far, 12.4% is my annualized IBond rate prediction. For now, plus or minus a few basis points here and there. And as the government announces the monthly CPIU numbers over the next few months, I'll keep updating these projections, so stay tuned. Now, for those of you not so familiar with IBonds, here are a few things to keep in mind. 1. IBonds are 30-year term U.S. government savings bonds. Basically, as safe as it gets, unless the U.S. government goes bankrupt and defaults on its debt, in which case, we'll all have even bigger problems than we have now. 2, you have to hold IBonds for a minimum of 12 months. There's almost no way to cash out your IBond earlier unless you live in a disaster-declared recovery area. 3, the IBond composite or annualized rate changes every 6 months, and it's calculated as the sum of the fixed rate, which is set at the time of purchase and does not change over the 30-year IBond term, plus a semi-annual inflation rate that changes every 6 months in November and May, multiplied by 2. I've linked some of our IBond interest videos below if you want more details, because IBond interest is not exactly straightforward. 4, if you cash out your IBonds in the first 5 years, you will lose the last 3 months' interest as an early withdrawal penalty. 5, the annual IBond purchase limit for an individual is currently $10,000. There are certain ways to buy more via gifting, if you have kids, or if you have a trust or a business. Check out our IBond playlist here if you're interested in learning more about any of this. 6, you can only buy IBonds via TreasuryDirect, not your IRA, not your 401k, not Fidelity, not Vanguard. You get the picture. If you don't have an account with TreasuryDirect yet, this video here will show you how to set up your account with TreasuryDirect and buy your first IBond. All right, super savers, as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget that thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another money-saving, wealth-building video.